Welcome to Modelpedia, the revolutionary software from Holocentric that combines the structure and integrity of models with the collaboration and flexibility of wikis. This unique combination gives you a platform for continuous improvement and allows you to build a reliable source of truth about how your organization works. In this movie, we demonstrate the round trip of distributed process improvement and watch as employees contribute to improving their organization. The first step in continuous improvement is when Jo, a customer services rep, notices something in her standard operating procedure that she believes can be improved. Because Modelpedia captures the employee's role in the model, it's ideal to use it as an SOP because it's directly relevant to each user. When she logs in, she's taken to her view of the organization, where she can see the processes that she's involved with. She navigates to the process that she's interested in, which in this case is the inquiries and process inquiries process. In this process, we have the customer contacting the organization. And then in the next process, the customer services rep handles that inquiry. Note how in this process, the customer enters their phone number into the keypad. Navigating to the next process, you can see that the first thing that the customer services rep is required to do is ask the customer for their phone number. Remember that in the previous process, the customer entered their number into the keypad, so asking for it again not only seems like a redundant step, it frustrates customers and therefore makes Jo's job more difficult. To flag this apparent problem for review, she adds a comment to the model. The comment is saved as a discussion underneath the model, and she can also choose to annotate it onto the diagram directly. This ensures that her comments remain related to a context, in this case, the process. This discussion is now open to others to comment on. Now Diana, the Customer Services Department head, sees the comment and wants to understand how widespread this problem is. Is it just a distracted employee, or is it something that must be addressed? Note how the Customer Services Manager has a different view when entering Modelpedia. Her homepage begins with a balanced scorecard view because her performance is measured according to the customer satisfaction metric. She can navigate directly to the process in question from the metric customer satisfaction, which is related to this process. Notice that she also has access to more content in the navigation pane. The first thing she wants to do is verify the details of the process in question, so she navigates to the process inquiries process. Noting that customers do indeed enter their phone number and then they're asked for it again, she adds a comment of her own to understand how much of a problem this is for the task based upon the discussion. First, he closes the discussion thread. Then he creates a task and assigns a priority to it. Creating a task ensures that the feedback is actioned and a proper process is followed. This discussion is kept in a database and will always remain with this version of the model. The first part of the continuous improvement cycle occurs in the browser because it needs to be available to a wide audience. We now switch to the modeling tool to assess the potential impact of the proposed change. Before we assess the proposed change, the library that contains our process is checked out of the model repository to maintain integrity while the model is being worked on. Here are the tasks that were created earlier. The task that we're interested in, which is to review the feedback from users and assess the impact of any proposed changes, is assigned to Andrew, who understands these processes and can assess the proposed changes and make some suggestions about it. A group of users who needs to be notified upon the task completion is also selected. This is important because this affects the way people work, so managers and end users need to be aware of changes to the standard operating procedures. Now a business analyst assesses the proposed change. So what things do we need to know about this to analyze it? Firstly, we need to know that it's not going to break other processes. Other processes potentially rely on this step, so we need to understand how these changes could have a follow-on effect through the rest of the organization. Secondly, we need to know if the change will be beneficial. There's obviously no point in improving one part of the organization at the expense of another. Lastly, we need to know if the change is possible and how much it will cost. The first question is answered using functionality called place-related. This dynamically draws all of the relationships between items in the repository. So if another process that we have not thought about uses this step, we'll find out about it here. And we can also determine how our proposed change will impact other parts of the organization. First, we check to see if there are any derived dependencies to the process step in question. These are relationships that are not immediately obvious or direct, distant relatives if you like. A list of related items is shown, and the relevant ones can be selected and placed on the diagram. Next, we check to see if anything is directly related to the inquiries process. Again, we select the relevant items from the list and place them onto the diagram. Notice how one of the related items that has been found is a link to the customer satisfaction metric that we saw earlier in the balanced scorecard perspective. From this activity, it becomes clear to the BA that no other processes use the enter phone number process step, so making changes to this won't impact the rest of the organization. Our second question about whether the change will be beneficial is answered using path analysis. The path analysis engine traces through all of the possible paths from a given start point and end point. It uses time-driven activity-based costing to determine the cost and the time associated with each path. We begin by defining a start point and an end point for the processes that we wish to analyze. We then find all of the potential paths through the process between those start and end points, as well as the time taken for each of those paths and the cost associated with each path. Once the start and end points have been set, we launch the path analysis engine, and all of the information is then propagated into an Excel spreadsheet for further analysis. Looking at the path analysis spreadsheet now, we can see that this step occurs 260,000 times each year, and that the weighted average cost of the 6 paths is $17.79. We then update the model and do some path analysis on the new process to see if there'll be any cost savings by removing the step. Analysis of the new process shows that the weighted average cost would be reduced to $16.25. Based on the number of times this occurs each year, there is a huge annual cost saving of $400,000 if we were to update the process by automating this step.